AM Savannah with Bill Edwards on News Radio 1290 WTKS and 97.7 FM.
Had this young gentleman in with us yesterday with Peter Shannon, musical director and conductor of the Savannah Philharmonic, and their big event, their big spring concerts coming up Saturday night, 7:30 at the Lucas. You don't want to miss it. One of the top violinists in the world, Ulf Hirschler, is going to be here to perform Brooks. Am I pronouncing it properly, George?
That's
Brooke?
correct, yeah. Brooke.
Yeah, Brooks' violin concerto in G minor, one of the most popular pieces of music in the world. Mm-hmm. And George, young 24-year-old conductor, rising conductor, and you've got some pretty impressive credentials for a 24-year-old young man.
I don't know if they're very impressive, but I've been working as hard as I can to try and meet who I can, and to try and see who can help me, really.
Well, the best way to do it is to study under the masters. Peter Shannon is certainly what he has done here in the 5 years that he's been in Savannah to put this orchestra back together has been nothing short of remarkable. And you've gone over and worked at the same orchestra. Haven't you conducted or been with the same orchestra, in Heidelberg, Germany?
I've visited there, yes, but I've never. My relationship with Peter began slightly after he moved over to the States. But I have heard some great things and great recordings from his Heidelberg years.
And you're studying at like the top conductor school in the world in Vienna, correct?
That's right. I'm studying in Vienna, but funnily enough, I'm studying with an American teacher.
Well, there you go.
So I'm
the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic at the moment. But no, my teacher, Mark Stringer, who was very famously worked with Leonard Bernstein throughout his career. He currently teaches in Vienna, and he actually grew up in Atlanta. So I feel like I've come full circle, and now I'm in Savannah. It's very, very interesting, very funny way of doing things.
Well, the London Symphony is not exactly, chop liver.
That's right. Yeah, I can agree with you there. I spent a lot of time as a student watching their rehearsals and observing how they do things and getting used to their sound. Also the London Philharmonic. Those two orchestras were always quite
Those
important.
are separate orchestras,
They are,
not?
yeah. London, for some reason, has the largest number of orchestras, I think, in any European city. There's so many radio orchestras, there's so many sort of privately run orchestras, which has been great for me because whenever I go home, there's always a rehearsal. So there's always something to see, and there's always conductors flying in and out of the place, so it's wonderful.
We have struck up a relationship with Jan Mulder. Are you familiar with Jan at all?
Actually, no.
He's from Holland,
right.
But he's living in the States now. His middle son, Simeon, goes by the moniker of Mr. Amadeus.
Right.
Dresses up in this Mozart outfit, looks great,
yeah.
And he was on America's Got Talent a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Did very, very well. Fantastic pianist in his own right, but his father is a composer, conductor around Europe, and he's recorded several records, there's my age again, several CDs and everything with the London Symphony.
Right.
And just had a new one come out, about 14 or 15 cuts on there, and he wrote about 12 of them.
Wow. Okay.
And does wonderful, wonderful work, and he's done a Christmas album with them. It's just been amazing stuff. So you're going to be studying under, and understand that you're going to be. I am an unabashed Zubin Mehta fan, and you're going to be working with that great conductor.
Well, he's coming to visit our university to give a masterclass, so we'll be able to see him teaching and see him working with the orchestra, which is, and again, one of the great things of studying in a major European music city is the fact that conductors are coming backwards and forwards all the time. And I think a very good way of learning is just to be in a room with these great maestros, because you can learn from everything they do, everything they say, and then the sound that they get from an orchestra.
George, get rid of the stereotype that some people have that the conductor just stands up there and waves the baton, and the orchestra does all the playing.
Well, I wish it was that easy. I certainly wouldn't have traveled all this way to watch the great Peter Shannon working. It's everything. That's the most difficult part of the job, is the fact that, well, for me, the most interesting thing in being in Savannah is watching the way that an orchestra and a way that a principal conductor can interact with a community, and with the society around it. Of course, at Music University, they never tell you any of those things. They never tell you about how you work on a daily basis. You learn the musicianship, you learn the skills and the craft. And so it's everything together. And then on top of that, you're always competing against yourself. You're always trying to find the next level of music making you can achieve, which is always more than just waving a stick in front of an orchestra, although it may look like that.
Yeah, indeed. You have there's something that you have to draw from the orchestra, because I have listened. Sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 recordings of the same piece. Mm-hmm. And if the late George Zell, who conducted at Cleveland for a number of years, conducts a piece, compared to Leonard Bernstein's interpretation, compared to Eugene Ormandy's, there's a distinct difference sometimes in the way that what they draw from the orchestra and what they bring out in a particular piece.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to tradition. Different conductors learn different things at different times, and so you end up with a kind of mishmash of what their influences have been, which for me is interesting, because as a young conductor, it's my job to expose myself to as many different styles of music making and as many different conductors, because all of them will ultimately shape my own style. And this is why I think you see these great maestros and you hear their recordings, and they have their own stamp on them, very much so. That's never going to change. People do accuse the recording industry sometimes of orchestras getting to the stage where they're sounding the same. But I think it's always going to be different. There's always going to be some stamp, musicality-wise, on them at all times.
Well, speaking of the great Zubin Mehta, he took over the Los Angeles Philharmonic, pretty prestigious position in itself.
That's right.
When he was about your age.
Yeah, that's quite difficult for me to understand.
But the thing that I wonder about, George, we might have the same thing in this business. When I was hired here, my boss was your age,
right?
And then the general manager said, "Now look, I don't know if you have an age gap problem, but this guy may be 24, but he's your boss." And I said, "Yeah, I understand that." And it was when it came right down to it was yes or no, sir. Mm-hmm. Whatever he said, it was either his way or the highway type thing. It wasn't a dictatorship or anything of that nature. But do you have that in an orchestra? All of a sudden you have this, you might have somebody, my age sitting there, first chair violin. And all of a sudden this 24-year-old kid walks up and is going to tell me how to play a piece of music.
It does happen. I mean, it's very difficult, because actually, when it comes to sort of making music, you have to get rid of any prerequisites you might have. It's, of course, you're younger, and they look at you with suspicion. Players are almost waiting for you to sort of come out of your skin and show that you might not be the one that they think you are. But in terms of age, the thing I've noticed is you have to forget about that. Also with nationality, everything. You just have to put yourself slightly further back and allow the music to do the work, and then things work. Of course, it is intimidating, and there are some fantastic conductors who are very young, making their careers from a very early age. And especially when you come against some of the older European orchestras who have members who have been there for 30 or 40 years, there's always going to be difficulty, and there's always going to be a comparison to previous conductors.
Of course.
And previous styles of playing.
Well, to me, music, if you were born with this musical genius, age doesn't matter to me.
Absolutely not.
And I've never looked at an age gap along those lines. And it was said that one of the biggest jobs has always been the Boston Pops conductor. And when Arthur Fiedler got the job back in the 30s, it was said that there was a lot of resentment from some of the guys who thought they should have gotten the job.
Right.
And when he first conducted, it's like you said, when he first started conducting, they would hit some wrong notes on purpose to see if he knew it. And it might not have sounded bad to the audience, but to an experienced musician, he knew. And finally, he would. And they said it would when he won them over, when he put down his baton and looked at them, glared at them, and said, "Gentlemen, we all know the score, don't we?" And they knew that he knew.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it does take these anecdotes and these little stories to actually win over an orchestra. I mean, you can spend too much time trying to win over an orchestra. Actually, that's often the wrong way to do it, because your first port of call is essentially to serve the music. And the idea is that the orchestra are on your side, because when you have an orchestra against you, then you might get the audience against you, and there's certainly no way that you're going to be able to help whoever you're conducting.
Rotten Tomatoes are coming out. Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah.
947-1290. Good morning. Who's this? Okay, all right. But George Jackson this morning, and studying an understudy to Peter Shannon here. Are you calling is that the proper term?
I mean, he's calling me an assistant conductor in the sense that I'm his assistant. He's apprenticing me.
Didn't he let you direct a piece last year? Didn't you come out and do something?
Yeah, very kindly he let me begin the second half of the program with Borodin's Steppes of Central Asia.
That's what a magnificent piece of music.
Yeah, it was. It was very kind.
I'm hoping that Peter's going to listen to me sooner or later and play the March Slav. I'm dying to hear that live. I've never heard it live. I've got some great recordings of it, but I've never heard it live.
Yeah.
947-1290. Morning. Who's this?
Good morning, Bill. This is Dan.
Hey, Dan, you're on with George Jackson, soon to be, and one of these days you're going to see him on covers of albums and all kind of stuff.
Morning, Dan.
Well, Mr. George Jackson, I would just like to commend you and all the musicians out there. You're talking to someone that would have loved to have been a musician, but I had one failing problem, and that is that I'm lousy at math.
Uh-huh.
And I came to find out that music and math goes hand in hand.
Doesn't it, though?
That's a very interesting. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I love watching these orchestras. I love watching concert musicians, especially when it's on something like a DVD and you can sit there and concentrate on what you want to. But I love the intent and the absolute concentration that these musicians have on the piece that they're playing. And people don't realize it, but it takes absolute concentration, mathematical timing, and everybody has got to be in absolute synchronization with each other.
Yep.
And when you have a 50-piece orchestra sitting there and all 50 players are in absolute synchronization, it is just absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree.
Thank you, Dan.
And I'll tell you something that people don't pay much attention to, but just that timpani player that gets in those 2 or 3, boom, 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 boom,
yeah, right,
during a piece, he's got to have it absolutely precision right, or he's ruined the whole piece.
That's right.
Yep.
It's like the split end that might be offsides on a play that was up the middle.
Yeah.
He didn't have anything to do with the play, but he could ruin the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's much worse than that.
Oh yeah. Well, that's true too.
Goes wrong.
That's
okay.
True, Dan. Thank you, pal.
Thank you very much.
Well, y'all have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. And that's something we can get into quickly after the break of the importance of studying music and what it does and the mathematics, because we're talking about quarter notes, eighth notes. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's arithmetic.
Applied
mathematics.
There's a certain logic attached to music, which I think translates into maths.
They do. And
I know that there's a lot of great composers who are also mathematical geniuses.
Yeah.
And I think there's always a link somewhere.
Just a couple of minutes left here with a new best friend, George Jackson, studying under Peter Shannon to be a conductor. And he's going to be able to. I'm going to get you something, George. A copy of Ein Heldenleben with the Los Angeles Philharmonic that Zubin Mehta recorded years and years ago.
Yeah.
And that I'd like. Yeah, hopefully you can get autograph for me when you get work with Zubin.
That's a challenge.
Well, just tell him, hey, look, I got this keepsake here for a
I'll
friend of mine
your name.
back in the States. Yeah. Oh yeah, please mention my name.
Yeah.
That'll impress him. Tell him he can like us on Facebook.
Yeah.
I think we need to start a reality show with George.
I do too.
He's young, he's good looking, he has a great personality, and he does such an interesting thing that I didn't even know understudies for conductors existed. I mean,
sure.
he'd be a star.
Just like actors, sometimes especially live performances, if the main character, everybody has an understudy.
That's right.
And if the main person can't be in the play that night, if they've got laryngitis, we've had that problem here.
Yes.
Or, they get sick. I mean, they're human just like anybody else. They're susceptible to all this stuff, and if they can't make it, then somebody's got to come out there and perform. Somebody came up, George, years ago with the show must go on. I want to find out who that was. I want to get a hold of him. And
well, I think that Leonard Bernstein wouldn't be here if he hadn't have stepped in at the last minute for a very sick. I think it was Bruno Walter.
Oh.
And so it's a very common thing.
Is that right? He's standing for Bruno Walter? Wow.
I think it was Don Juan, New York, and I can't remember the exact year, but yeah, I mean a lot of conductors, also in opera, as you can imagine, a lot of opera singers get very sick.
Sure.
Especially in winter in Europe. At the moment, for example, minus 10. And so yeah, I think it's a wonderful way to actually, to make your career by suddenly jumping in and, trying to swim. It's
trying to swim.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating because we've seen conductors, but to really learn about what you do and to figure out what it is you're doing and how easy you make it look.
It is remarkable.
I think the difficulty is as a conductor, you're constantly trying to work out what it is you're doing. And I think everyone else is as well. And so, sometimes you think, okay, who needs me here? Why am I here? Can I not be here and it still function? And sometimes you need to step back and kind of say to yourself, right, okay, I need to help here.
Yeah.
During practice, have you ever played a prank and just gone in the complete other direction and just, if you were doing slow, gone fast to throw them off?
I've never tried that, but actually that might be a good way of solving some problems.
See if they're paying attention.
Yeah, that's an idea. Yeah, that's an
George,
idea.
great seeing you. I want to have you back. You're welcome
thank you very
anytime.
much.